What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another daily drop presented by TarHillIllustrated.com. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner. Joining me as he always does, it's THI publisher Andrew Jones. And AJ, we're going to be doing a little, so I almost call it like a crystal ball daily drop here, because we're kind of trying to predict the future in this one, for a lack of a better word, about an interesting topic. In this one, we're going to be talking about who Carolina's starting quarterback may be in 2024. Obviously, Drake May going into this season, very highly touted Heisman candidate. You know, he's the guy who succeeded Sam Howell. So a lot of really good starting quarterbacks for Carolina in the Mac Brown Part 2 era. Can't really complain too much about that. But the question remains, who's going to take over for him in 2024 is, I think we can all assume, and pretty safely assume, that just will be Drake May's final season in Chapel Hill. So AJ, when you look at the current roster, you look at who maybe Carolina has committed in that 2024 class. We don't know what will happen in the 2025 class as of right now. It doesn't matter anyway. But when you look at kind of the quarterback room as of right now, what we know will likely be there in 2024, how do you see this, potentially, how do you see this starting quarterback position shaken out in a couple seasons?
Well, I can tell you that it's something the staff has already been focusing on for quite some time. And it is a high priority to try to get as much intel as they possibly can on the direction that they have to go. So what is that direction? Well, maybe it's in-house. Maybe it's Connor Harrell. Maybe Tad Hudson explodes and it's Tad Hudson. I think more the expectation is that this fall is huge for Connor Harrell, who has been inconsistent so far in Chapel Hill. He's either been great at practice or he's been so-so. And they need to see consistency. They're not going to hand the reins to someone who is at times really so-so. So he has to have a great August. He has to have a great season. Even if he doesn't get on the field much, he has to be highly consistent every week in practice, in preparation, because he's still going to go through the game plan and all. He's going to get 20% of the reps, 30 at times, whatever it is. He's going to have the camel game where he'll play a lot. And he needs to be consistently at a pretty high level for them to have a lot of confidence that he's the next guy. They love the potential. They like the arm. They love the speed. I mean, he's got tremendous explosiveness. Mm-hmm. He's a guy that can roll. And if something's not there, he can find a crease and dart and pick up significant yardage, more so than what they've had from quarterbacks in the past. They've had some pretty good runners over there. So he has a chance to be the best running quarterback they've had in a long time. But for this offense to work, the quarterback has to be a thrower, and they have to be able to make all the throws, and they have to be able to consistently make the reads and develop the right chemistry with receivers and that kind of thing. So those are elements to his game that must become consistent at a pretty high level, and at a high level where if he gets inserted into the game for whatever reason, something happens with Drake, how much of the regular offense do they have to deviate from with Connor? If they don't have to deviate much by November, let's say there's a scenario where that happens, that's a great sign. If they have to deviate a lot from the normal offense in November, if there's ever that moment, then that's not a great sign. So what are the options? If it's not Connor, I think you can look to see them go into the portal in December. They did look in the portal here in the spring. There was nobody out there that they were interested in. So the expectations are there will be in December, because quarterbacks at the portal like crazy at the end of the season. Think about all the ACC quarterbacks that moved around. A couple of them transferred in-house in the league. Jerkovic went from BC to Pitt. Brian Armstrong went from UVA to NC State. I know that Notre Dame's not ACC in football, but Hartman went from Wake to Notre Dame. So guys will be out there. They'll cost them some money, but they'll be out there. And then the other factor, Jacob, is Michael Merdinger, the high school kid who down at Cardinal Gibbons in Fort Lauderdale. All expectations are he's going to have a huge year and he's going to skyrocket in the rankings, and he's someone that they love. But he'll have 1 year of high school starting experience. So I think he'd be someone they want to bring in and take their time with. So I would say right now, in 2024, the quarterback in the opener for North Carolina is either going to be Connor Harrell or someone they get from the portal who's a one-year quarterback.
I like that shout. Yeah, and it's an interesting situation, too, because it's kind of the first time in the Mac Brown, Part 2 era where they've had to deal with this. Because, when you look at Howell and May, I think kind of in hindsight now, I think it was a situation where the staff looked at these guys for, a couple of practices like, oh yeah, he's really, really good. It's not like they had to kind of sit there in the offseason and be like, all right, who the heck are we going to start? Because nobody's really that good. And I'm not saying these guys aren't good. I'm just not saying they've emerged like Drake May and Sam Howell was, where their talent was just kind of, they had to start. They were that good. And obviously now when you see what they've gone on to do, it's a no-brainer. So I do think that's a big challenge for this staff. And it's probably the first time they faced this. And also too, AJ, do you think the fact that the guys that are currently there kind of in Harrell and Hudson were recruited by a coordinator in Phil Longo who's no longer there, and who maybe looks at that quarterback position and maybe likes maybe he likes a certain size and a certain, physicality or a certain body type that maybe Chip Lindsey looks at it differently. So I think that can present some challenges as well, because you've had that shift at the coordinator position.
Well, Phil was very comfortable with a lot of running incorporated into the role for a quarterback. Chip Lindsey's a little bit more pro style oriented. There's more drops by the quarterback in Lindsey's offense than there were in Longo's offense. So to answer your question, I think, that might have something small to do with it, but Lindsey's going to have a whole year of watching Connor Harrell. So he's going to know if he's the guy or not. And I will say this, Sam turned out to be better than they thought initially. Drake turned out to be better than they thought initially as well. I mean, they both had incredibly they had very high expectations for both. They thought both were NFL guys, but whatever their expectations were, both guys, went past that mark quite a bit early, almost right out of the gate. So how does that affect the way that they gauge what Connor might be able to do? If they think Connor's a B quarterback, perhaps he's a B+1. The thing is, they've had A quarterback, at times A+. I think Sam was an A+ at times. I think Drake's been an A+ pretty much the whole time. The last 4 games of last season, he dropped off a little bit. A lot of that, though, I think was a byproduct of some of the changes that were going on behind the scenes, and that affected some of the production as well, some of the approach, if you will.
Yeah.
So I think that I think there's something to what you're saying. Merdinger a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. I think Lindsey prefers a little bit longer, a little bit more pro style, a little more drop back, a little more go through your progression and make the throw. And I think Longo was a little bit more okay with the guy just taking off and running. I mean, Sam, his net yardage was under 1,000 yards, but he ran for more than 1,000 yards. Yeah. And I thought that was a pretty early indication against Georgia State that, wait a minute, this is not what everybody thought the offense was. And I remember asking about it at the time and just kind of giving, he had a 62-yard run, blah, blah, blah. But it was an indication that there were some issues. Mm-hmm. And that team had that issue all year long. I don't think they want Drake running as much as he did last year, especially with just the value. I mean, he's got a $300 million right arm.
Yeah, just that good.
He does.
Yeah, he's that good.
Maybe more than that. So you don't want to mess that up.
Yeah. No doubt about it.
That's why I think Lindsey's such a really good fit for what they're doing because of that. So huge for Connor Harrell. That's something that, we'll ask about a lot, maybe not always in press conferences, but try to get information on how Connor's doing, because if they go after a quarterback in the portal, next December is going to be wild, man, because there's going to be so many dudes.
Yeah.
That want to step in there and be in that offense and play with the kind of skill that they'll have back in 24.
Yeah, and it's a massive position, obviously, because it's the quarterback. But with May leaving and Howell, coming before him, there's there's high expectations in terms of this staff and in terms of this program when it comes to quarterbacks now. And it's a good thing because they've had really good quarterbacks. So, it's that much more important, because if Carolina can have a good year like we think they can have in 2024, you got to build on that still. You have to keep building. You have to keep getting to that next level, especially as Matt gets deeper into his, part 2 era. And the quarterback's the most important position on the field. And right now, a lot of question marks around that position, AJ, rightly so, because there's just not a guy back there that's ready-made.
And I think to your point, there are 3 factors to watch. How does Sam do as a starting quarterback in DC?
Yep.
So I know that it would be a different coordinator, but still the same program, same head coach, that kind of thing. And you see people comment about Drake now, well, he's Mitch Trubisky 2.0, whatever. Yeah. Mitch made some nice money, if nothing else. And he did, win a playoff game. So, which a lot of starting quarterbacks don't ever do. The other factors are, what does this team do? How do people view North Carolina football in December as opposed to right now? And also, what does Drake do? Is Drake a Heisman guy? Is he in New York? I think those things can put them in a situation where, yeah, we really like Connor, but man, we could go get a hotshot. Think of all these quarterbacks that have won the Heisman here in the last 10 years. A lot of them are transfers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay if you step outside and you go get someone who's an absolute stud. And if they have all that to sell, and the reputation of UNC and quarterbacks is much greater than it is now, they can sit back and say, you know what? We kind of have our pick of the litter, and we may not have to spend that much simply because guys would be investing in their future as well.
Yeah.
So they could position themselves really, really well with respect to the portal next December.
Yeah, especially if
or they may say, you know what, we're going to spend that money on offensive linemen since they're super expensive, and we're going to roll with Connor Harrell because he had a great fall. So we'll see.
We'll see what happens. Yeah. And, especially when you got a guy like Clyde Christensen there as well, if he's still around, which we expect as of right now, he stick around for a few years. That's a pretty good selling point too, to attract some transfers or, maybe a top level recruit in the class. Who knows what'll happen. So yeah, I agree. I think it's Harrell right now or a transfer. I think that makes the most sense as of right now, but we'll continue to see how things develop, and you never know what'll happen. So especially with that transfer portal around nowadays as well. So AJ, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up, kind of keep this one a shorter daily drop as we're trying to do with a few of these. We do like to go long-winded at times, but not necessarily we like to. Sometimes we just have to on the topics that we're talking about. So
sometimes AJ just does it because he has no self-control. So,
but we did some top 5 podcasts, and it's top 5. It takes a while to go through those. Can't really just zip through those without providing some kind of context. So again, we'll try to mix these up, keep these a little bit shorter as well. So appreciate y'all guys watching. If you enjoy the daily drops, make sure you keep it locked to it. And real quickly, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor on this daily drop real quickly. That's myperfectfranchise.net. Big thank you to them for continuing to sponsor, guys. Keep it quick, keep it short. If you're in the corporate world looking to maybe find a side hustle, maybe you're in the corporate world looking to start a new career, or maybe you're just fresh out of college looking for a new job and you want to be your own boss, do your own thing, My Perfect Franchise can help you decide and figure out if opening a franchise is the right decision for you. And Andy Ludicky, the founder and owner, will walk you through the process the entire way as well. And he doesn't make a single penny unless you make a single penny as well. So keep it locked. Big thank you to My Perfect Franchise for continuing to sponsor. Check them out below. You can also watch the podcast AJ did a couple months ago with Andy, get a better idea of the business and how it works and how you can get in contact with Andy and put your life and career in your own hands. Again, myperfectfranchise.net. Big thank you for them continuing to sponsor. Links in the description below. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another daily drop. Appreciate y'all watching. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks.